And welcome into the Tuesday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Hope everybody's doing well. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Got the car working then?
Car's working. Took that battery out yesterday, put another battery in, and here we are. We're all good to go.
So you had one ready to go, or you had to go get one?
I had to go get one. I took mine out, took the wife's car to an auto parts store, bought another battery, put that sucker in, and here we are.
Good for you, man.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Nice job.
Feels good. Walked out there this morning and was like, okay, start. And it did. So that was good.
But you had confirmed previously that it would
did.
start.
Yes,
yeah.
I did.
Good.
Nick Keyser, how we doing?
Start just like that, right?
Yes, please start. That's what I said.
Very nice. When I was in high school, I had a push to start Altima. Then I wrecked it.
You had a push to start in high school?
I did, yeah.
I'm not sure that push to starts were even around when I was in high school. I know they weren't around when Rexrode
Probably
was in
not.
high school.
Yeah, I can promise you that. I did have a sweet Mazda GLC, though, 1985.
Nice.
Y'all ever heard Derek
My
talk
first
about his
car.
Bullet?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
thing's insane.
Yeah. Hey. Everybody's first car story is usually pretty good. Mine was 2001 Dodge Ram, and my dad had driven it around for a long time. And at the time, it had a red hood and a gray/silver body. So I could never be anywhere in the city of Hendersonville without someone knowing I was there. It's like, oh, it's Robby because it's got the red hood and the gray body. And there he is, right over there.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was like your trademark. It was your brand.
Pretty much. It's good stuff. I love that truck.
Dodge Rams are great, man.
Yeah, they were. We got a lot to get to on the program here today. Caroline Fenton will join us at 7 o'clock. Get her thoughts on all things Titans and the latest in the world of college football as well. Jason Lloyd from The Athletic will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Bill Callahan hiring by the Titans with him, how it affects Cleveland from their perspective, and what sort of an asset the Titans are getting in Bill Callahan. So looking forward to that coming up at 8 o'clock with Jason Lloyd from The Athletic. In the meantime, taking your thoughts all show long, 615-737-1025. We'll also get into whether or not Mike Vrabel is too scary later in the show, too, which I know Rexrode's very much looking forward to.
Yes, excellent discourse going on. Let's do it.
I'm excited about that one. We'll get into that a little bit later this hour, around 6:30. Joe, I was looking at our preseason picks yesterday. I guess more specifically mine because I don't really have yours in front of me. But I had a Cincinnati, San Francisco Super Bowl pick. So I do feel good about picking San Francisco to get to the Super Bowl. Even though it's not really going out on a limb, one of two isn't bad. I'll take it. And I blame Joe Burrow for the other one. Just getting hurt.
Yep. Well, are we going to go through them? Because I had 1 or 2 also.
You did?
I did.
Now, am I right that you had the Ravens making it?
No, and that's the thing. So, yeah, see, I didn't pick the Ravens to. That weirds me out because I swear I was talking up the Ravens big time. But
I thought you were too.
I had the Bengals one in the North.
Oh boy, maybe I talked you into it. Maybe you wanted to go Ravens. And you listened to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. So let's see here. Well, I mean, since this is a good thing to do, 6 o'clock hour, so people aren't listening, so they don't see how wrong we were. So, okay, so I had Bengals, Jags, Bills, Chiefs winning the divisions. You had what?
I believe I had the exact same.
Okay.
Bengals, Jags, Bills, Chiefs.
Okay. Wild card, I had Ravens, Jets, Titans.
I had Jets, Dolphins, Titans.
There we go. Yeah, so
We both picked the Titans to make the playoffs.
So neither of us had teams that made the playoffs. Steelers.
Correct.
Neither of us had Browns.
Correct.
Or Dolphins.
I had
Okay.
Dolphins. But
Or
yeah.
you had Dolphins.
Yeah.
Okay, good job. Yeah. I mean, the Jets thing is,
It got derailed pretty early.
I mean, that was my AFC title game was Chiefs over Jets.
Yeah.
So, So I did have the Chiefs right, but boy, the way it came about, pretty interesting. How about your NFC?
I had the Niners winning their division, obviously, and making it to the Super Bowl. I had the Minnesota Vikings winning the – actually, no, I didn't. I had the Minnesota Vikings, the wild card. I had the Lions winning the North, which you scoffed at me.
Wow.
You did. You scoffed.
I did.
Lions won the North, so got that one right. I had the Eagles winning the East. And I had the Cowboys down yonder. Or excuse me, the Eagles winning the East, Cowboys as a wild card, and I had the Bucks winning the South.
Okay, Bucks, good pick. I had the Saints, so good job on that. So I had Vikings, Saints, Eagles, Niners. And then I had Cowboys, Packers. I did have Packers.
I did not.
And Seahawks as a wild card with a title game of Eagles over Vikings. So
Captain Kirk, if he wouldn't have got hurt, he was playing at an MVP level.
He was.
He really was.
Yeah, the Vikings would have at least been in the playoffs. And, yeah, but I missed on the Lions. Admittedly, I missed on them. They showed their true selves eventually, but I missed on them.
What does it say about both of us that we had the Titans making the playoffs in the preseason?
Yeah, pretty. Yeah, that WHMR was cooking back in August there. I'll tell you what. But obviously, the biggest disappointment teams. And the Bengals are you have to separate them out a little bit with the Burrow thing.
Kind of the same with the Jets,
and
too.
the same with the Jets. Yeah. So two of mine that were wrong, I give myself a break. You may not want to, but I do. But the Titans, both of us, yeah,
tough one.
That's a tough one. At least we both had them as wild cards.
Yeah,
and that's the crazy thing. Of course, is we had the Jags winning the division, and the Jags did not make the playoffs. So,
well, I remember
no one's picking the Texans though. Show me anybody other than somebody.
Oh yeah,
on WHMR in Houston who picked the Texans.
Well, I remember our conversation about it before the season. It was like, you know what? I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to come down to the last week, and Jacksonville gets it done again. But Titans will sneak in there as a wild card. It's like, well, neither one of those things happened. It did come down to the last week for Jacksonville, and they did not respond.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, actually, yeah, we're definitely more wrong on the Titans in the AFC than anything. I mean, again, I should have had the Dolphins, the Browns. I missed on the Browns. They were, better than I thought. But the Titans were the biggest miss. And the NFC, well, the Eagles, I mean, what happened to them
faded.
This year was wild. Yeah, my hatred for the Lions is just it clouds judgment. So good for you for picking them to win the division.
I probably did that more so out of spite for you than anything else. But
really?
Yeah, but it worked.
You were right. I mean, they're a talented team.
So what does all this tell us? When you look back at preseason stuff? What does all this tell us, and what should we learn moving forward here?
Really, I mean, I think. I don't have a big issue, like Saints. I mean, the Bucks we missed on. I think the big thing is the teams that we didn't have. I think this was a big year for teams that kind of came out of nowhere. The Texans for sure.
Yep.
I mean, the Colts were that too. They didn't get in, but they were a pleasant surprise. Mm-hmm. And the Bucks, without question. Were that team. Oh, and the Rams. I mean, neither of us even mentioned the Rams. So Rams, Bucks, Texans in particular, as we talked about during the playoffs, second, third, and fourth best odds to have the worst record in the league, and both of them are in the postseason. So I don't think it's. I mean, you can't count on something like that every year. So I'd say this was a more surprising year than average.
I would say so too. And obviously, when you're looking at this before the year, the injury part of it, I would have loved to have seen what the AFC looked like if Joe Burrow was healthy from start to finish, and if Aaron Rodgers was healthy from start to finish. I would assume that makes a pretty big difference for those two teams. So, Baltimore, would they end up 13-4 in the regular season or 14-3, one of the two? I mean, they're making the playoffs, right? But, could Cincinnati have snuck in as a wild card? Could the Jets have challenged Buffalo for that division? Buffalo at one point was 6-6 or 6-5,
right.
And we're wondering whether or not they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
If Rodgers doesn't get hurt, are they challenging the Bills and the Dolphins for the division at that point? And look, those are still going to be, when next season comes around and we're looking at the AFC, those are two teams we're going to say, well, if Aaron Rodgers comes back and he looks like Aaron Rodgers, Jets are going to be right there. If Joe Burrow could stay healthy, we know what Cincinnati has on that side of the ball. They're going to be right there, and that just adds to what's already a crowded mix in the AFC with teams like Indy and Houston ascending the way they are.
Exactly. The Browns were 11-6, by the way. But still, I mean, if you think about 11-6 for them with Deshaun Watson really not playing well, and then with Joe Flacco as as your quarterback.
Yep.
I mean, that's awfully impressive. But yeah, the Bengals should come back. I think the Jets will. The Jets are. I mean, it's going to be interesting. The Jets, to me, could be a huge range next year.
They could.
Of possibilities, and then, I mean, my gosh, man, the second worst team in the AFC. And by the way, did we not pick them? Yeah, I left out the Chargers, and you did too.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good pick on our part. A lot of people had them in, I think, but second worst record in the AFC, the LA Chargers. I mean, I would think that bringing the Harbster with Herbert, and if they have a good offseason, that's a team that absolutely can get back in the mix.
Blake on the text line, by the way, said Joe did have a push to start. Push the car, pop the clutch. From Blake.
There you
on
go.
The text line.
Oh, I've done that before, Blake.
All over Rexrode. We'll take your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Off and running today here on the program. I got a lot to get into. Like I said, Caroline Fenton will be with us at 7 o'clock. Jason Lloyd from The Athletic at 8 o'clock, reacting to the Bill Callahan hiring by the Titans. What does that mean for the Titans? How big of a loss is that for Cleveland as we're just going through a crowded AFC? Be a very intriguing conference heading into next season. We'll get more into that next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. I'm looking up on SportsCenter. Brock Purdy being interviewed by Sal Paolantonio, friend of the show. It's an interesting interview.
Yeah. When we had Sal on, I'm trying to think. Was Eddie George going for like 1,500 yards or something? I don't remember.
Keith Bullock out there, you got to watch him. He's flying around.
I tell you what, when you get Bruce Matthews out pulling on a pin and pull play, tell you what.
I think his thoughts were actually like, I just think the Titans need a little bit more of a pass rush. It's like, well, they had 9 sacks in the playoff game that we're discussing with you, but okay.
That's right. Was it right after the
yeah?
I see. I totally forget that. As I have fun with people, and
Instead of the 9
I
sacks,
can't remember what year anything happened in.
They really should have had 13. They could have got Burrow to the ground like 13 times. They'd have probably been okay.
Figure out that pass rush. What? A year earlier, it was true.
That is true.
Only a year off.
So we just went through the AFC part of this with our predictions heading into the season. So Rodgers gets hurt, that derails the Jets season. Burrow gets hurt and is never right, and Cincinnati can't overcome that. You got teams like Indy and Houston on the rise. Cleveland, they're really interesting heading into next year because they still got a really talented roster, and I have no idea what to make of the Deshaun Watson stuff. I mean, he was very clearly outplayed by Joe freaking Flacco. So what does that mean for the Browns heading into next year? I have no idea. The point is, it's a very crowded AFC right now, and Brian Callahan finds himself in a new job where he's trying to navigate through all that and get to a spot where you can come out of the other side of it competing for not only your division but a playoff spot in the AFC, which is not an easy thing to do in today's AFC with the quarterbacks that are in this conference and the quality of teams that are in this conference as well. So it's a heck of a challenge that's at the foot right now of Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan to get this thing turned around. And we talk all the time, Joe, about the NFL being a league where you can change your roster and you can change the trajectory of your team pretty quickly. I do think with the AFC being what it is, it's going to be a heck of a challenge for the Titans to do that, to get back to being in playoff contention very quickly. Now, having said that, if Callahan comes in here and unlocks something with Will Levis and you make a couple of the right decisions this offseason, then I do view the AFC South right now, like Houston, I think is going to be the favorite heading into next year. They just won it, and C.J. Stroud was incredible, and that's what the conversation is going to be heading into next year. I don't know what to think of Indy with Anthony Richardson coming back. I mean, I thought Steichen did an unbelievable job with Gardner Minshew to have them within basically a 4th down play of probably making the playoffs last year, so there's that to consider. Jacksonville completely collapsed at the end of last season, and Trevor Lawrence, I think, has been underwhelming as a starter in the NFL. So that's a long way of me saying, like, I don't think the Titans are in some unwinnable division. That's, it's just going to be Houston and everybody else. We were having the same conversation about Jacksonville last year, and we saw how that played out. So how quickly can Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon get all this turned around in a league that is designed for you to get it turned around pretty quickly if you make the right decisions?
Yeah, well, it's the Titans being competitive next year as we sit here today is absolutely less of a weird thing to think about than like the Texans winning the division would have been a year ago, right?
Agreed.
So, so there's that for one thing, and then you do have the last place schedule. So what does the last place schedule get you? Get you the Patriots at home, get you the Jets at home too. By the way, so your guy. Wow, so I'm just realizing this now. Not only does Aaron Rodgers come in here, but also Jordan Love and your Packers.
He does.
In here. Oh my!
Oh, trust me, I know.
Oh, That's the thing too. Is that even if you have a last place schedule, randomly like who your NFC division opponent is, sometimes can derail that. It's not a great outcome really for the Titans to have. The NFC North, it's a pretty good division now. I mean,
the great outcome was supposed to be this year, right? With the NFC South.
Right.
You're right,
How did the Titans do against the South? They lost to the Bucs. They lost to the Saints. They beat
the Falcons and they beat the
Panthers.
Yeah.
They went 2-2. They won the 2. Will Levis had the big breakout game against Falcons. But, yeah, 2-2, like you need to do better than 2-2.
Right.
So next year you get the Packers coming in here, and I think the Packers could be really good. And the Vikings coming in here. That's the thing. We're also looking at these things, and it's like there's so many quarterback decisions yet to be made.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the Vikings – is Cousins re-upping with the Vikings? If not, what the heck are they doing? You know?
I mean, if you're them, like if you're Minnesota, wouldn't you want him back? I mean,
Yes.
with the way that he played before the injury. And I know it's an Achilles, and look, he's in his 30s. So that's something you got to be cognizant of. And eventually you're going to have to find out, like, who's the replacement when Kirk Cousins does leave. But, like, right now, looking at your options, if you're Minnesota, I think clearly your best option is bringing him back.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I would assume Kevin O'Connell would think so. And I know it's the Super Bowl, so it's almost hilarious to talk about this, you know? I mean, it's like, seriously, when people rip Dan Quinn, the guy blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. You suck. Like, gosh, he had a 28-3 lead over the Patriots and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, huh? Interesting. But still, if Brock Purdy stinks in the Super Bowl, I'm not ruling out Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins have been tight for darn near 15 years. So, something like that could happen. So they're a wild card. So this is a problem with the last place schedule when you get like the Bengals, who are going to be back next year, but they're coming in here, so that'll be a little reunion for Brian Callahan.
God, it feels like they play them every year. It really does.
They're basically division rivals. You got the Bills away next year. You got the Dolphins away next year. You got, and speaking of the NFC North, you got to go play the mighty, mighty Detroit Lions on the road next year.
It's really not a great schedule for the Titans looking at it.
Right, that's the thing. Like, it's a last-place schedule with an asterisk because there's a lot to it that's not great. I mean, the Bears away, I don't know what they're – if the Bears are starting over with Caleb Williams, that's probably better for the Titans, right? To me, like, they're probably more likely to be able to win right away, I would think, with Justin Fields than if they move Fields and they bring in a rookie, I think, right?
I would think, unless he's just incredible.
Got the Harbster on the road. We just talked about the Chargers. I mean, they could be good next year. They have a really good quarterback, and then you also have the wild card one. The Titans don't have any Europe games, right?
I don't think so.
So the wild card weird oddity one, the 17th game is the Commanders away. So
Drake May. So you could see Caleb Williams and Drake May.
You could see Caleb Williams, Drake May, along with your Justin Herbert and your Tua and your Josh Allen and your Burrow and your Cousins and your Jordan Love and your Aaron Rodgers.
That's a heck of a stretch.
And of course your Stroud, your Richardson, and then also let's not forget the mighty, mighty Jared Goff.
Yeah. So I mean, look, honestly, I had not looked at their entire schedule's not the right word because the schedule's not out, but the lineup of teams that they're playing next year. It's not great when you think about they just finished last in their division.
That's the thing. Like, how many teams? I mean, basically the teams that have questions at quarterback. The Vikings, we don't know. The Bears, but, it's going to be a very talented player regardless. And the Pats, the Pats at home, that has that last place schedule feel. The Pats coming in here. There you go. What are they? Let's see. Is that going to be Jaden Daniels probably? Jaden Daniels is a rookie. So you might see Jaden Daniels, Caleb May, and Drake. Wait, did I just say
Caleb
May and Drake Williams?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels all on the schedule. That's exciting.
It's exciting.
It may not be exciting for the WL, but it's exciting.
It's exciting, but it kind of highlights what we were talking about, right? I mean, the path back here to getting back into contention for your division, getting back into contention in an AFC that's loaded and doesn't feel like it's going anywhere is going to be a really difficult thing to do. And you got to make the right decisions. And one underrated part of this that I feel good about with Brian Callahan that we've not talked about much, Cincinnati, and we've talked about this with a couple of different people, their scouting department a little bit light in terms of, like, comparatively speaking to the rest of the NFL. So their coaches have had to be pretty involved in the scouting process. Obviously, those guys have drafted pretty well. And look, I don't know how, specifically how involved Brian Callahan has been with that. I would assume some. And that makes me feel good heading into the draft if I'm a Titans fan of, let's get Brian Callahan's thoughts on some things and, along with Rand Carthon and the collaboration that they want. But the background of where he's coming from and the way that they've had to do things draft-wise makes me feel pretty good if I'm a Titans fan.
No, it's a good point. It's a different kind of situation. They are much lighter than your average team. I think it's the lightest. I don't know.
I believe so.
I think so. So I mean that's so a lot of involvement there, which I think is good. I mean that's what it. I mean to me, if you're a personnel department, if you're a GM, you want that involvement, of course, right? But even maybe a little bit more, just more practice and more feel for some of that stuff because you've had to. So I would think that would be good.
Coming up next is Mike Vrabel, too big and scary for the National Football League.
Oh, boy.
Joe Rexrode, very much looking forward to this conversation. We'll get into that next.
Yay.
This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, Robbie Stanley here. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some bets. I got Kansas City taking down San Francisco. It's just difficult for me to go against Patrick Mahomes in this situation, but you can take it any way you want to take it. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and a whole lot more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/Rob in order to sign up. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/Rob. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
What is your sense of why Vrabel doesn't have a head coaching job right now?
I don't think that there was a fit for him. I don't think he sat in front of any owner who thought that his style was going to work for what they were looking for. Do you know I had a GM at the Senior Bowl who mentioned to me Vrabel's physical build, that he's a very large human being and can be very intimidating to people in an organization that are going to be part of these decisions. And that is a factor, which I laughed. I said, stop. That's not something that's real. Who cares what someone physically looks like? And he said, I'm just telling you, I've been in rooms and somebody's physical presence can make a difference. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Outside of football, it has an effect, right? They always say really tall men have better opportunities.
That's Diana Rossini on the Athletic
Keys
Football
are just
Podcast.
cut her off mid-sentence there. Jeez, that's enough out of you, Diana.
When Keezer has enough,
You
he has enough.
never know what Keezer's going to do.
Did you listen to the show? Because the guys talk over her quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
I don't listen to the
but-
whole show,
but
but
yeah.
I listen to that aspect, that segment, yeah.
But there you go.
Which has created quite a buzz.
It is creating quite a buzz. There's no question about that. So a lot of reaction to that from the Athletic Football Podcast yesterday. Talking about Mike Vrabel, why he was passed over on the coaching cycle, why he doesn't have a job, and Rossini's comments there about how apparently at the Senior Bowl some general manager told her that his physical stature could play a part of this too, just because of how big and intimidating his presence could be to people in the room. And people have taken that and run with it and have talked about how, well, is Vrabel too big for the NFL? Is he too big and scary? Nobody's going to hire him anymore? What do you make of the comments from Diana Rossini there that she was apparently told by another general manager of the National Football League at the Senior Bowl last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think Vrabel needs to, I don't know, man, stop lifting. Just do some carrot juice for a while, do some fasting, stop lifting. Maybe get some glasses,
Yeah.
just sort of de-intimidate yourself. I mean, when I saw this, I was like, oh God, people are running with it because, you can take it when you read just the segment of it, it's like, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I mean, I think it goes to the idea of being an intimidating presence, right? I do have one thought about this, and I've said this before. Mike Vrabel from Akron, Ohio, Bobby Knight from Massillon, Ohio. I've been in the presence of Bobby Knight before, and someone told me long ago, a big part of this whole thing with Bobby Knight is also that he's bigger than everybody, and he can beat the crap out of everybody. That there is something to that intimidating, just Neanderthal, I could beat the crap out of you to intimidation. So
He's chucking chairs out on the court. So
Yeah.
you gotta keep your head on a swivel.
And I swear to you, Vrabel and Bobby Knight have shared traits. Their personality trait. They have a little bit of some of the same stuff going on. So but it's also to me it's more personality than size. Like Dan Campbell's huge, and everybody loves that big teddy bear, right?
For now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Until they go 6-11 next year. I want to read this from another coworker of mine at the Athletic, Nick Baumgartner, who everybody's tweeting this up today. This is what Nick said. So listen to this and think about this in the context of even the Titans.
Okay.
So, quote, as insane as this sounds, when you know how many frauds make their way into NFL buildings, it's not remotely far-fetched. Good ex-player head coaches scare the bleep out of non-playing suits because of how fast they win the locker room and expose said frauds every time. They see how ex-players can walk into a room and own it, command respect from every corner, even in the worst moments, in ways the front office just can't. They want, quote, alignment, but if your GM is weak and soft and doesn't get ball, the coach also needs to be weak and soft, end quote. Interesting stuff.
It is.
The Vrabel, to me, the Vrabel Belichick, and they're very different situations, but I kind of put them together in terms of, and I don't know if it's this so much, but maybe this is a little bit of it, but definitely the domineering not just presence and personality, which again, Vrabel's been effective in locker rooms. Like we can all agree on that. I hope, right?
I hope so.
I mean, I understand like Tier Tart's mad at him, and A.J. Brown said it wasn't fun here, and Wesley Woodyard is just gonna go to the end of time, ripping Vrabel, but pretty good with the locker room, but also just the domineering. This is my show. I have the full power, all that stuff. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that worked against both of them.
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, I hear that. At first, I'm glad Rossini kind of laughed about it, because that would probably be my reaction.
I mean,
too.
even right there, she's like, "This is stupid, right?"
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I mean, she did say in that clip there that the GM was like, "I'm just telling you, yeah." Like, it's like, so. First off, I would love to know who the GM is. It's like, oh, that guy's big. You got to watch out for that guy. He's big, maybe a little bit of a problem. People might be scared off of that. And she's just like, really? Okay, then. I get the overall point.
I need a former kicker as my coach.
The personality,
the smallest one possible.
Like just hearing that and thinking that apparently there's a general manager out there who was offering his thoughts and saying, well, you know what? Vrabel's huge. So that may be part of the reason why he's not, some people don't like that. Maybe part of the reason he doesn't have a head coaching job right now. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That a general manager actually said that.
Yeah, I'd like to know who the GM is. Yeah. Grigsby says he makes owners scared to use their hands when talking.
Well,
nice.
Maybe so. So
what are you doing with your hands, Miss Amy?
Have we finally gotten to the bottom of why Vrabel doesn't have a job right now? He's too big, and the other teams are like, you know what?
Too big, too
we
scary.
Can't do that. Stay away from me, Vrabel.
I
Got in the
guess
interviews
so.
and like, oh God, I can't do that.
Yeah.
We don't have the right size for the Atlanta Falcons clothes. It won't fit him. Can't do it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do XXL. Let's do the next interview on Zoom. He's too scary in the room. This is a good. Dustin in Nashville says, how important is the Titans season going to be for Vrabel's job prospects moving forward? If we
It is interesting though, because like everybody just assumes, and I would put myself in this category too. Everybody assumes that he's just going to land a head coaching job again one day, and I'm
not going to assume anything anymore.
I thought that he would this offseason. So the fact that there were 7 job openings, and he doesn't end up with any of them is surprising to me. And I guess next coaching cycle, he's going to be in the mix. He'll get some interviews for some jobs. But, I mean, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 guys that we don't even know about, haven't even for the casual NFL fan hasn't even heard of right now. They're going to find themselves in job interview type situations next year, right? I mean, this time last year, did you have any idea who Bobby Slowick was?
No,
exactly.
Not at all.
So, and he's going to be a candidate next year. You would think if things continue to go well in Houston. There's the Ben Johnson part of this, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
See what that looks like. But anyway, it's just there's a lot out there right now in terms of the young offensive coaching candidate continues to be a thing in this league. And there were a lot of defensive coaches hired this cycle, and Vrabel wasn't one of them. So I think he's going to get a job in the future, but I don't absolutely know that he's going to be a head coach again.
No, I mean they're like Aaron Glenn, the Lions' other coordinator. I think he's close too. And if they have I think they're probably going to address that personnel wise. He did pretty well with the personnel he had this year. Not very good. So he's another one who would be a real candidate next year. And like you said, there's a couple. I mean, Frank Smith from the Dolphins basically sat this one out. But if they have a big year, there's a lot of possibilities. I can't assume anything with Vrabel. Like I see Dan Quinn, and this is the thing. This is the case to be made for Vrabel. Like Dan Quinn's a good case, I think, for him, which is, and obviously Dan Quinn's had more success. Dan Quinn got to a Super Bowl. And also he won one as a DC with Seahawks, so he has a better resume. But he went back in, went to the DC route, went to the Cowboys, and did a great job. They're loaded, but I think he was good. And here you go, he got that job. Oh, I mean, not I guess over Vrabel. There was some interest. That's something we need to get into too, is the whole Vrabel aspect of that, along with the Ben Johnson thing, because there's some interesting stuff there. But yeah, I can't. I don't know. He may have to do the DC thing to stay I mean, I think this year he's not. Sit down,
Get paid.
enjoy the money, enjoy Miss Amy's money, and because I'm just going to call her Miss Amy from now on, just because that's apparently
what we do.
the thing to do, and then get back into it. But I don't know. It's hard to. I am very surprised. Raise my hand. I was wrong without question, and like the big thing is comical, but I think the personality thing with him, and look, the way things ended here, I don't think it helps him. I mean, I think that like the lack of communication that we talked about extensively, part of that is on him, and so people know he asked for full control. People know that like he didn't do what he should have done communication wise after the Patriots weekend. Stuff doesn't help him.
Let me ask you this. I may have asked you this before, but now that the coaching cycle is done, I'll ask it again. Who gets a job first, Belichick or Vrabel?
Well, is he done?
I don't know.
I mean, Steve Belichick.
Steve has gone off to Washington in college.
That kind of tells me maybe Bill's like,
Maybe.
I mean, that's an interesting one. It's still amazing to me with him, too. Like, no one out there thinks that if this guy wants to keep going, that he would be a good possibility for you?
I don't know. I mean, I could still see. I'll give you an example. Like next year, Dallas does their thing and they end up in the playoffs and it goes poorly again.
Yep.
Like I could see Jerry Jones saying, "All right, I'm making a call to Belichick," and doing that. But other than that, like I don't know. Like I guess the other one that I could see happening for Belichick would be if things go south with the Jets, like early on. Like, could you fire Saleh and bring him in there for the Jets? I don't know. But, like, the opportunities, I mean, what is he, 71? I mean, there's not a ton of time left for him to be a coach.
Right. Like, I think it may be it, and he's not saying that right now. And if he's not going to say it, then, then I think that you have to assume he's going to be interested, but it might be. Another thing about this, like you said, defensive coaches, and we've talked about this, but, like, the whole personality thing, the overwhelming personality thing. You've got, even though you got defensive guys, but you have young guys like Gerard Mayo and Mike McDonald. You have Raheem Morris, right? And then, of course, you got, Canales is a surprise hire. He kind of, I didn't think he'd get a job this time around. You have Antonio Pierce, and then you have Quinn. I mean, the only, like, sort of domineering kind of personality hire in this cycle is Jim Harbaugh, who just won a national championship and is a hot commodity. So who missed out? Belichick and Vrabel, but also Brian Flores is another one. Eric Bieniemy, like those are. I'm reading a Sando piece about how stronger personalities and/or being heavy-handed in their dealings with others. Belichick, Vrabel, Flores, Bieniemy kind of fit that bill. So is society getting soft?
Well,
is that really what we're talking about here?
Well, maybe.
We're all getting soft.
Our buddy Zach in Nashville on the text line says, it makes sense now. Vrabel chose not to pursue a job because he chose to be big. So if we see him get thinner, we know he's gearing up for quote, Coach Bod season. This from Zach in Nashville on the text line. If the next time we see Vrabel in public, he's lost a ton of weight, it's like, oh, boy. Vrabel's trying to look like Mike McDaniel out there.
Like I said, he'll have like the big Nashville beard. He'll have like glasses and like a nice like the
top hat,
the long hair kind of combed over and stuff. Hey guys,
it's
Coach Vrabes. Just call me Coach Vrabes.
Skinny jeans.
Yes,
Hey
exactly.
Mike, what are you doing with your hands?
Chai latte. Yeah, get in there, Vrabes.
Coming up next, we'll continue the conversation on some coaches around the league, including a Ben Johnson aftermath of the Washington job. Now that it's been given to Dan Quinn. That has been really intriguing to see all the way that this whole thing went down. Lots of reaction to the aftermath of Ben Johnson and the way that situation was handled. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. We'll be joined by Caroline Fenton coming up at 7 o'clock. Get her thoughts on all things Titans as well. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025.
Can I rip the crap out of Jeremy Gover right now? I love
Sure.
you, Gover. But let me just read this. Like, did Stilly, is this like, do we need an exorcism? Did Stilly inhabit his body? Listen to Gover's text here on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. Quote, if we've been pretty sure of Vrabel himself as Rossini's source all this time, how is this he's too big angle? How do we know this? He's too big angle isn't just Vrabel telling her to put that out there to save face. Does it not seem like how an egotistical football coach would trick himself into thinking? End quote.
Probably not.
Here's my written response to Gover. One, Diana isn't going to lie about a GM telling her that, which she clearly stated at the Senior Bowl. A GM said that to her. I mean, like, so now,
Again, I would love to know who the GM is.
Yeah, like, so now Diane. So we're just people just out here making crap up. I mean, I freaking hope not. I'm quite positive she's not. Two, if you read our story on Vrabel's demise and still think, and I wrote the little thing where people do like some capital and some under, you know what I mean? Like, Vrabel is Diana's only source. You got. I'm trying to give the listener the full effect. If you still think that, oh, yeah, we're pretty sure Vrabel, that's Jared's garbage. I mean, how could you go through all this stuff that we've gone through the last few weeks and then think, oh, yeah, just Vrabel. Vrabel said, oh, the only source on that story about all the stupid crap Vrabel did? I don't know what to tell you. And then I wrote in all caps, is this Stilly using Gover's phone? But I think he may have inhabited his body. No, this is not Vrabel putting this out here. Yeah, Vrabel wants this out here. Hey, I'm really embarrassed. Tell people I'm too big. Because I like look at my lats. Look at my bicep. As I curl, tell them I'm too big. They're just afraid of me. The Vrabes. I mean, what are we doing
Would be
here?
awesome. That'd be a heck of a strategy. I'd be all for it.
God, it's got me muting myself.
Yeah, Diana, I got something to tell you over here. Just hold on a second. Let me finish this set. We can get this story out.
Let's FaceTime this while I'm lifting. I can't stop lifting right now, okay? Today's leg day.
This is one of my favorite things that we've ever talked about on the program.
God.
I love it. I hope one day we know who the general manager is. We probably won't.
Yeah, someone
love
asked.
to know.
Yeah, someone asked who is the smallest gym in the league. We're gonna have to figure that out.
We are.
That's gonna be our most likely candidate here.
What do you make of the Ben Johnson stuff? So for those who have missed it, Ben Johnson, as we talked about as the Titans were searching for their head coach, was, we thought, one of the hottest head coaching candidates out there, and it felt like him and Washington made a lot of sense together for a long time, and Washington was the last team to hire their coach, and they end up going with Dan Quinn. I think if you read the tea leaves, it's pretty clear Dan Quinn was not their first choice and that Ben Johnson was. So they were going out there apparently to meet with Ben Johnson, and while they were in the air, apparently Johnson's agent told them that they were not interested at that point. Jenna Lane put this out there from ESPN a few days ago, said that she was told that Ben Johnson was, quote, turned off by Commanders ownership, that they're basketball guys, and felt they were a little too confident in their football opinions. Said she also heard that he didn't interview well. He said, but clearly not a good fit for both sides. So there's a lot of smoke around the Ben Johnson stuff right now, and our buddy Charles Robinson put it out there yesterday that it seems like in the aftermath of that decision, the Commanders putting a lot of stuff out there trying to basically take down Ben Johnson. What do you make of the way that this has all gone down?
Well, speaking of Diana Rossini, my God, I mean, she needs some time off. Like, it's Super Bowl week, and I know I'm going to see her in a few weeks at the Combine. And, I mean, she is everywhere. But she did a story with Ben Standig, also a friend of the show, who covers the Commanders. And, yes, there's no – you read this story, the Commanders are very, very mad at Ben Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
They are very, very mad at Ben Johnson and wanted it out there what all went down. So it's interesting what Ben thought, what they thought. Basically, I guess his agent texted while they were on the plane, which also when you read the story, you realize I guess they really weren't interested in Aaron Glenn. It was just like, yeah, we'll interview Aaron Glenn too, but they wanted Ben Johnson. So he bailed on them. They're upset, so they're talking about it. One thing about this that was interesting though, and I'm trying to find it. This is a really long story. The idea that he and I said this watching on TV. That he likes to hole up and draw up plays, but isn't necessarily, comfortable with the whole leader of men thing in the locker room, which I think is interesting. But yeah, basically the Commanders are angry at him, and now it's going to be a whole bunch of throwing stuff around. There's a little bit in here about how like he's going to hurt himself, Ben Johnson, with this, which is what a Commanders that their side thinks. I would refute that. If the Lions keep doing really well, he keeps doing really well, someone else will still be interested in hiring him. Like the way this went down is not going to be it's not going to ruin his chances of being a head coach. But there's another interesting thing in here, which is a quote from an executive in the league, okay? And this is the theory about Vrabel. Quote, "The Commanders passed on Vrabel because of Rand Carthon. He fired Vrabel. Adam Peters was not going to hire the coach his friend just fired. That's how this works sometimes," end quote. And again, that's a quote from a source who had that theory. Rand Carthon didn't fire Vrabel, so that guy's wrong.
Right.
However, I think the guy is right in that the Commanders did not hire Vrabel because Adam Peters and Rand Carthon are very, very good friends, and whatever happened with Vrabel and Carthon, there's no way it helped Vrabel with Adam Peters, and he wasn't going to hire him. So I think the quote is half right, except the whole who fired who. Rand heard what Miss Amy was going to do.
Yes. That is interesting.
Yeah.
And because Peters was the number 2 apparently in San Francisco, Carthon was the 3 under John Lynch. But, I mean, obviously when you've worked together as long as they did, a close relationship there, and I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. If there's kind of a tiebreaker either way, you're probably not going with Vrabel in that situation.
I'm going to guess, even though, again, I don't think like Rand Carthon and Vrabel weren't enemies, didn't have some beef or anything, but I'm guessing Rand Carthon probably said some not great things about Vrabel.
Probably so.
I mean, if you're gonna be honest, obviously Vrabel rubbed people the wrong way, and I'm assuming at times, including Rand Carthon.
Yeah, probably so. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Caroline Fenton. We'll get her thoughts on the latest with all things Titans. Look ahead to Super Bowl 58 as well. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. And as we are every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock, we're joined by our friend Caroline Fenton, host of Caroline, Willie, and D-Mace. Caroline, good morning. How are you?
No need to be intimidated. I am only 5'2". So that's good. Any taller might get a little hairy.
Well,
That's why keep it on Zoom. We could, if you came in the studio, then you
are we
intimidating.
ruling out a late growth spurt from Caroline Fenton that could really change the equation here?
Right. Never rule that out. And I could walk into a room and it would be like a King Kong reaction. Like all of the people in the land are screaming and terrified at how big and scary I am, me and Mike Vrabel.
So what do you make of that, that apparently a general manager mentioned to Diana Rossini at the Senior Bowl that maybe potentially one of the reasons Vrabel's not finding himself a job is that his physical presence a little bit too big, and that turns people off a little bit?
Like truly the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And part of me has to think that somebody went up to Diana, and before he went up to her, he or she, they turned to their buddies and said, look, I'm going to say the most ridiculous thing ever and see if Diana takes that as the truth. Like they're playing a prank on her or something, on poor Diana. Like that is the only rational explanation that I have for that somebody was playing a prank. This is football. There's not a whole lot of skinny minis floating around there. Like maybe Brian Callahan needs to make it a point to skip a few meals just to stay rather slender and unintimidating.
I mean, this is a funny topic. I love this, but the intimidation thing with Vrabel is real. But
it's not because of his size.
No, that's way down the list. But the whole package of him is glowering, massive. You've been in those pressers with him, right? Like there are some people that I can see. This is one of those things that gets isolated from the whole conversation, which is his intimidating presence. And yes, if anybody,
that's what the GM said. The size, it's a ridiculous comment,
right? But again, I'm not saying it's not, especially if you isolate it. If you take it away from, we know his personality. He's this overwhelming personality, and yeah, he's 6'5", 260.
Yeah.
It is a weird human nature thing, but I get it to a point. If you're saying only
if he
his
won more
size,
games, would you call him overly intimidating? Like so intimidating that we couldn't hire him? That's the thing. Is to me, it sounds like a pathetic excuse to say, he's just too intimidating for us. Well, if you won games, we didn't care how intimidating he was.
No,
we didn't care how tall he is.
Yeah, I don't know what the conversation was. I assume it's she's asking people why wasn't he hired? But I think that absolutely there's something to his personality, right? I mean, the Belichick thing too. We've talked about, right? So then some GM's and he's a big guy too. And so now let's take that out and, have fun with it. It's fine.
I just, if you think he's an ass, then just say that.
Hey,
I think some people do.
I think some people do.
That's what it comes down to, is maybe he's just not a very likable guy.
Caroline, what do you make of the Super Bowl matchup coming up on Sunday? San Francisco, Kansas City. Kansas City going for Super Bowl number 3 under Patrick Mahomes. Are you sensing some Kansas City Chiefs fatigue from the general public?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And I did see a tweet, and it went back to, I guess, was it the entire map except for the itty-bitty area of New England was completely red. Everybody wanted the Chiefs to win. Everybody wanted to knock the Patriots off their high horse. Fast forward to this year's AFC Championship game, Ravens-Chiefs, and the whole map was purple except for the state of Missouri. So that really does kind of show you where we've gone in the last few years, that the Chiefs at the beginning were like the breath of fresh air, and now everyone is sick and tired of the Chiefs. And I do understand the sentiment of, well, how can you have Chiefs fatigue when the Patriots were so dominant for so long? And yeah, the Chiefs have been dominant for the last, 5-6 years, but it doesn't even scratch the surface of what the Patriots did. I do think that there is an overly sensitive sentiment of dynasties now in football and sports in general, just because the Patriots had a reign for so long. Alabama had a reign for so long that now that it looks like if it looks like there's a team that could be that next Patriots team, like Georgia. They won 2 national championships. I still think people have Georgia fatigue just because we're so sensitive to the dynasties. And if it's not your team, and now it's like, okay, well, Alabama's finally out of the way. Now we got to deal with Georgia. All right, well, New England and Tom Brady, they're finally out of the way. Well, now we got to deal with Kansas City. That I think fatigue for a certain team is we're so much more sensitive now as a sports society, and it happens so much quicker that you could win 2 Super Bowls or you could get back to the AFC championship game twice in 3 years, and all of a sudden everyone's sick and tired of you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I feel like likability is part of it too, or lack thereof. Like I feel like Belichick. I mean, Kirby's not all that likable, right? Saban sort of transformed into this weirdly likable, which is very strange to see. But
And I do think maybe the Patrick Mahomes likability scale has gone down a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe not because of him, but because of his wife, his brother, and Taylor Swift.
So oh wow, poor Taylor. Poor Taylor is also affecting Mahomes' likability. Huh? Yeah, I think there is something to him. I think
it's association with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I still like Patrick Mahomes, but also Andy Reid's likability to me is good, so it should offset this a little bit, but I'm with you. I mean, I think that just anybody who anytime a team wins a ton like this, there's gonna be and then you bring in Taylor Swift and all hell breaks loose. What do you think is gonna happen Sunday?
I think the Chiefs are gonna win. I have a really hard time picking against the Chiefs because every time I have picked against the Chiefs, like I thought the Ravens were going to roll the Chiefs. Learned my lesson. I also think it's fascinating that for the second year in a row, to a certain extent, we have, last year it was the Eagles and the Chiefs. Last year it was elite quarterback Patrick Mahomes against a more stacked Eagles team. Like, yeah, Jalen Hurts was probably playing close to an elite level last year, but I don't think any of us, or at least I, didn't view Jalen Hurts as an elite quarterback, a good quarterback that was elevated by the pieces around him. Fast forward to this year, we're getting the same kind of thing. Elite quarterback that has even fewer pieces around him than he did last year. And then a Brock Purdy, who I don't think any of us view as elite, but is elevated by the pieces around him. I can't pick against the elite quarterback. But I do think that maybe the messaging on quarterbacks or the way that we view how to win a Super Bowl could be, our view could shift if Brock Purdy and the 49ers take down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I'm looking forward to it. I do think, Caroline, there's some pressure on Kyle Shanahan in this game too. I mean, they've been knocking at the door for a while, which I think is a testament to him and the roster that they've built. But like at some point, if you're him, you got to knock that door down, don't you?
It's a fair point where, you're always a bridesmaid, never a bride, can constantly get back into the NFC Championship game, get back into Super Bowls. But if you don't, ultimately win it, then, what are you? But I think we all will still view Kyle Shanahan as one of the best coaches in the National Football League. I mean, you look at least the Titans and a lot of the models that NFL teams have tried to follow over the last couple of years is getting a little piece of the Shanahan McVay tree.
Oh, yeah.
Getting someone that runs the Shanahan system. So I do think that to a certain extent, you got to win one to be able to be in the conversation with some of the best coaches in the NFL. But at least my perception of Kyle Shanahan doesn't change just if you're not able to win one. I think it's more so the narrative of the quarterback, that if you don't have the Mahomes, if you don't have the Burrow, it's a lot more difficult to win one. Of course, Sean McVay kind of changed up that conversation a few years ago, but I think that we viewed Matthew Stafford in a higher regard than maybe we viewed Brock Purdy or even Jalen Hurts last year.
Caroline Fenton, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode, joins us every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. Caroline, great stuff as always. Thanks for being with us, and we'll be listening at 11 o'clock.
Appreciate y'all as always. Chat next week.
Absolutely. Caroline, our guest, joins us every Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. We'll react to what Caroline had to say. Take your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, that's coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Football fans, FanDuel has a perfect way for everyone to get in on Super Bowl 58 action with a no-sweat same-game parlay. Joe Rexrode here to let you know. When you bet on Super Bowl 58 on FanDuel, one game can mean a lot of wins. America's #1 sportsbook has all your favorite bets, money line, point spread, but also the prop bets. My little parlay for this one, Chiefs, over, Kelsey anytime touchdown. So many ways you can go. Combine those bets for the chance at a bigger payday, and you're going to get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win. So start building your own, or you can bet a popular same-game parlay that's already made for you in America's #1 sportsbook. Just visit FanDuel.com/Joe102 if you don't already have an account. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and you got to be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued is now withdrawable bonus bets. Expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call the Tennessee Red Line, 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care and the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Thanks to Caroline Fenton for being with us in the last segment. Appreciate her perspective as always. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Joe in Spring Hill. Joe, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, gentlemen. Thanks so much for taking the call. I do have to agree that Kyle Shanahan's one of the great, coaches in the game today. But you got to remember, if he doesn't win this big one, let's look at the objective data. He was the architect of the offense of the Atlanta Falcons, who gave up a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, gave up a 17-7 lead to the Rams in the fourth quarter in an NFC title game, until you do it. And remember what the perception of Andy Reid was before he won his Super Bowl. I take up guys like Tony Dungy. Before he finally got over the hump, he was one of the more brilliant defensive minds in the history of the game, the architect of the cover two defense. But yet, until he won the big one, he was in a different category. And the way the league is trending now, I mean, let's face it, I'm a Patriots fan. We had no problem letting the greatest coach of all time go because it's an offensive league now. I think the Titans hire was genius. Amy Adams did the right thing, brought in a guy, and I almost equate the Callahan hire like bringing in a Lane Kiffin type thing. Like, you're going to get his dad as well, who probably has 40 years of, coaching knowledge under his belt that he's going to bring, just to the table for because he wants to do it. But the bottom line is the way the league's trending now, you have to have offensive-minded coaches, guys like Belichick done. And can we just say it? Enough with all you Tomlin apologists. What has this guy done? He's won one divisional playoff game in the last 10 years. Oh, he's never had a losing season, like singing his props. I mean, guys, enough already with the Mike Tomlin apologists. Just had it. But
thanks for the call, Joe.
Great take on that. Guys, have a great day.
You too. There's a lot to get to there from Joe.
He got a lot in, and very impressive from inside a Pringles bottle, too. How did he get all those takes out?
I'll trust you. I got one functioning earphone over here, so I couldn't tell.
Oh, you couldn't get that wind tunnel?
Yeah, didn't quite get the full effect.
Yeah, I got both ears going. Sorry, man. Sorry for your trouble.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to buy our own equipment. So, first of all, there was a lot to get to there. We talked about the Shanahan-Reed thing
for
this
sure.
week.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like, if they lose, then he will start to become the new Andy Reid, which is great coach, offensive genius, but can't win the big one.
Yeah.
Also, though, but to push back on Joe and the Pringle bottle, is that a bottle? They call them bottles? A canister, I guess, right? Pringles canister. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, remember, as we've talked about, offensive league, all this stuff, 5 of the 8 coaches they're defensive coaches. Yeah. 5 of the 8 coaches hired defensive coaches, which, again, if you just told me that factoid right after Vrabel was fired, then absolutely 100% I'm saying, of course Vrabel is one of them.
Well, look, I think there's significant pressure on the 49ers in this game. I really do. And, from the Shanahan perspective, like if they lose, it's not like he's on the hot seat or anything like that. And everybody, I think, can see that Kyle Shanahan is a really good coach. At some point, Joe, they're not going to have the best roster in the league. You can make an argument they've had either the best roster or right there among the best roster for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And some of that has been derailed by injury. I mean, they went through a season where like Jimmy G got hurt and they were piecing together starting quarterbacks. But they've had a great offensive line for like 5 years. They brought in Christian McCaffrey last year. George Kittle's been a stud for a long time. They've had a really good defense for a long time. Like, at some point, you're not going to have all that, and you've got to find a way to capitalize on this window here. So, I mean, it speaks well to him that they are in the conversation seemingly every year, and they've been to conference championships. They've been to another Super Bowl, and they lost to Kansas City where they had an opportunity to win that game. But I think that there's a pretty significant amount of pressure on them to close this out and get it done. There is.
Now, look, I don't know if their personnel situation isn't sustainable. I mean, obviously they've drafted extremely well. They've had, the D-line, their linebackers are the best in the league. Like you said, the O-line is really good. You got fantastic. And then you make a trade for McCaffrey, and that's just been brilliant. So,
but Trent Williams he's not getting any younger, right? He's 35 years old.
Sure.
He's best left tackle in football, and he's not going to be around forever.
For sure. I mean, you got to, like the Rams, why were the Rams in the playoffs and right there to win a playoff game in Detroit? Because, they had a great draft. Not just that, but that totally, flipped it back their way with one great draft. So, you have to keep drafting well. So, I mean, the Niners' track record is pretty good, and even when Rand Carthon was hired, that was a lot of the talk, right? Some of their late-round success. If that's going to keep up, then they can, I think, stay good. But, yeah, this does seem like a window right now. And I think it's Shanahan. I mean, I think most owners in this league would sign up to have Kyle Shanahan as their coach and give him final say on personnel and be very happy with it. But there's still – it'll be a narrative for him. It may be more than that for Brock Purdy if they lose this game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then on the flip side, like if Kansas City wins, you're talking about 3 championships already for Patrick Mahomes. And then it starts to get into, and I think we're kind of already there, but it'll solidify it even more. Like you'll start talking about Patrick Mahomes of like, okay, where exactly does he rank on the greatest football players / greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen list? And I think people are going a little bit crazy right now with he's better than Brady. I mean, Brady did it for 20 years, so there is something to be said for that. But he wins another one, and you factor in what we talked about yesterday. He's been in the AFC title game every year of his career so far that he's been a starter. It's pretty wild to think about. And if he wins his 3rd championship, then you start to talk about, okay, so there's Brady, and there's Mahomes, and there's Manning. Like he's already in that category.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be on the same pace for rings, as Brady. Here's an interesting stat that Scott Kazmar put out there. He's played 17 playoff games, which I guess now is a season because of the stupid NFL adding a 17th game. But most passing yards through 17 playoff games. Patrick Mahomes is 3rd with 4,800 yards. Drew Brees first, 5,200. So it's Brees 5,200, Manning 4,831, Mahomes 4,802. Tom Brady 9th, 3,954. So he's 1,000 yards behind him in 17 playoff games, which tells you that is some of the difference. And again, I'm with you. Like, I can't sit here and say GOAT for Mahomes. But the Chiefs have been more Mahomes reliant in this run than the Pats were on Brady in their early days. And that people don't want to remember that. Forget, Stilly thinks Brady completed every pass that he ever threw. And he was great. He led the late drives to the field goals. But they were a great defensive team. And it started there for the Patriots, whereas this is the first Chiefs team, to me, where a lot of this season has been led by their defense.
Yeah. Oh, and that's to me, that's the most intriguing matchup of the game Sunday is the Chiefs' defense against that San Francisco offense. Because, look, Patrick Mahomes was great and made some great throws, and the throw he made to MVS to close out the game against Baltimore was ridiculous. But they didn't do anything in the second half offensively. Like, they got shut down in the second half offensively by the Baltimore defense, and their defense just came up big. And can Kansas City's defense come up big against that offense with not, the Purdy part of this is obviously important, but, the thing about San Francisco that kills you is McCaffrey and Kittle and Ayuk, Debo. And they just got so many different weapons to get the ball to. So can Kansas City keep up with that? That's going to be the most intriguing matchup of the game to me.
Yeah, it's like it's strength versus strength when it comes to Chiefs D, Niners O. That's the main attraction. The other side is like the Chiefs offense has finally showing some life.
Yeah.
It's been a disappointment this year, whereas the Niners defense has actually been really disappointing, of late. They got made some big plays against the Lions and Packers, but for the most part, the Lions and Packers went up and down the field on those guys.
Yeah. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We got more of your thoughts to get to on our phone and text lines. We'll do that coming up next. The Rob Rant at 7:45. Jason Lloyd from The Athletic will join us at 8 o'clock. We'll get into the Bill Callahan hiring from the Cleveland Browns to the Tennessee Titans. At that front, looking forward to that conversation with him. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. I got some wristbands to give away, a 4-pack of wristbands to the National Wild Turkey Federation Convention coming up at Opryland February 14th through the 18th. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a 4-pack of wristbands to the National Wild Turkey Federation Convention coming up at Opryland February 14th through the 18th. I'll be out there as well. It's a fun event. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
So your wristband will get you free access to see me, which I know is just very enticing.
That's worth it alone.
Yes, very enticing out there. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Chip from Mount Juliet on the text line talking about Mahomes says the true test will be after Reid retires with Mahomes' legacy. Will Mahomes continue to win without Andy Reid? There are some, Joe, that think, and I don't know that I put myself in this category or not, there are some that think if they win Sunday that Andy Reid could retire after the game, that he could just ride out with another Super Bowl win, his third one in Kansas City, and that could be it at age 65.
I thought that – has he not blown that up and said he's definitely not retiring? Am I wrong about that?
I believe that he has, but there are some that still believe that could be the case.
As for Chip, look, Andy Reid's a great coach, without question. I mean, if you've been watching the last few years of Patrick Mahomes and you think it's more Reid making Mahomes look good than Mahomes making Reid look good, man, I'm sorry. I cannot get behind that at all. I think they work great together. Reid is fantastic creative offense. He's had different OCs, but it's his offense. But Patrick Mahomes has done so many things on his own that are absolutely absurd, that every coach would be like, yeah, good coaching, but be joking about it, right? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's going to continue to be a great player after Andy Reid retires.
He will, and it's similar to me. I had this thought, in the heyday of Brady, especially in the heyday of the AFC of Brady and Manning together, right?
Well, let's talk about the Brady Belichick thing. Go ahead.
But I'm just saying, like Brady and Manning together. Like I've always wondered how many otherwise like either great quarterbacks or quarterbacks that were good enough to win Super Bowls. And I like Phillip Rivers comes to mind. Andrew Luck comes to mind. How many quarterbacks got derailed just because they had to go through Brady and Manning every year? Like if you're the Titans, like Mahomes isn't going anywhere. Burrow's not going anywhere. Like you got to go through those guys if you're going to ultimately get to with Brian Callahan where you want to get to, and that is competing for a championship and winning a Super Bowl. I mean, and it's not just your division that you're having to compete with. Like it's those guys. Like for forever, people in the AFC, it felt like it was either Brady in the Super Bowl or Manning in the Super Bowl, like every year. And of course, it wasn't every year, but for the most part, it was. Like Brady and Manning were dominant. And is it going to be like that with Mahomes and a Burrow, Mahomes and I don't know, somebody else? Like does Justin Herbert get hot? But like you got to find a way. Like Mahomes isn't going anywhere. You got to find a way to get through him if you're the Titans.
Right. Like like when Caroline was on, she talked about like maybe the narrative changes a little bit if the Niners win. I mean, I to me, like as we've talked about, it wasn't that long ago that Nick Foles won a Super Bowl and beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Like that was 5 years ago. So or I'm sorry, I guess it was 6 years ago. So. I mean, you can do it the other way. It's less likely. You'd much rather have the the generational QB, but most teams won't have it, and you can still win it. You can certainly get there without that. But you're right, and Mahomes. So Mahomes has lost to Burrow, and he's lost to Brady.
Yeah,
those are the two quarterbacks who have beat him since he has taken over as the. And yes, I know it was an older Brady. It was a game in which Patrick Mahomes had 0.3 of a second every time he took a pass. But
he lost to Brady
still
twice.
Brady.
He lost to Brady his first AFC title game in his first year as a starter, and then in the Super Bowl with Tampa.
That Chris Jones roughing call.
Yeah.
Ooh, baby. But yes, so that's all. So far, that's the only. So, but if Brock Purdy wins Sunday, then there's the first time that a non-elite QB has beaten Mahomes. But to your point, even if that's the case, great. He'll be back next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And Burrow's going to be around, and Josh Allen's going to be around. And I know Lamar Jackson, we're back down on him, but he's going to be around too. And he's pretty good.
Well, and if you're Levis or Brian Callahan and the Titans, you got to find a way to put your name in the mix of all that, right? I mean, that's the hard part. I mean, look, I'm convinced. Like Phillip Rivers, I think is a good example. Like Phillip Rivers, to me, go look at some of his numbers. He was absolutely good enough to win a Super Bowl, but he never could because every time he made the playoffs, he was running into Brady or Manning.
Now he also he made some bad mistakes.
Look, there were some Phillip Rivers death picks.
Yes,
there's no question about that.
But
But he was good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like Phillip Rivers, obviously the whole you think of Eli Manning, you think of like the Chargers and all that stuff. I mean, I think Phillip Rivers was definitely a better quarterback than Eli Manning, but Eli Manning's got the 2 rings.
Exactly. And I don't know who that second quarterback is going to be, right, in the AFC. I mean, it's been Mahomes. I think Burrow is probably the number one option, but they've not won a Super Bowl yet either. They've been to one. But, like, there's so many good quarterbacks right now in this conference that are all chasing Mahomes. It's like, if you're Will Levis and the Titans, can you add your name to that mix? And that's what we don't know yet. Like Will Levis, we talked about it yesterday. There's a lot to like about what we've seen. But can you – at the end of this next season, and I think some people are probably already putting C.J. Stroud there. I need to see it again for another year. But at the end of this next season, do you get to the end of it and you think to yourself, okay, the Titans have their quarterback. We don't know everything about the Titans. We don't know that they figured out all the issues that they have, but we know that they figured out quarterback. Can you get to that point by the end of next season where you feel great about your quarterback moving forward with you and that he's going to be a factor in the AFC for the next decade?
Yeah, that'd be big. But if you're a Titans fan and you're asking the question of like, can Will Levis be as great, can be on that top line with Mahomes and all those guys? Obviously, you would hope so. But if you're waiting for him to be a Patrick Mahomes or anybody to be, it's hard to find hope. That's why it's a team sport,
right? And I don't think you have to be Mahomes. I do think you have to be. Like, if you're going to have sustained excellence, you don't have to be Mahomes, but you got to be probably a notch below, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're going to be that.
Tier 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can he be tier 2? Yeah. He can be. And maybe by the end of next year, we know he's not the answer. I mean, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if that is how it turns out, because I just can't believe with his talent and his competitiveness and all that it's just going to flame out next year. But we're going to know a lot more for sure by next year, one way or the other.
LD from McMinnville on the text line says, I don't think you guys have discussed enough about the Titans' new DC. For years, I've wished for a defense like the Ravens. If the Titans can get remotely close to that, fans should be happy. This is from LD from McMinnville, talking about Denard Wilson coming over from the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see. I mean, that still comes down a lot to personnel and what you do there, but certainly – we talked about it when he was hired. I think the track record is good, and there's a lot to like there from Denard Wilson from a DC standpoint. And, anytime you've been around Greg Williams and you've been influenced by him, it could be pretty interesting out there.
Well, it's interesting that, LD, you're taking this to, like, the Ravens defense. I mean, he was there for 1 year as DB coach.
Exactly.
When Vrabel was hired, that was the Ravens defense coming in. Dean Pease came in, right? I mean – but there's also, there's just something about the Ravens, and I guess it's kind of true of the Steelers too. Different coordinators, changes in scheme, changes in personnel, but still like a core toughness that has kind of prevailed. I mean, it's amazing what the Ravens have done through all these different DCs. I have to think that that's, John Harbaugh, right? Like it has to be I mean, he's the constant, so it has to be some attributed to him. But just 1 year in that franchise for Denard Wilson. So I don't know how much it's going to be, quote unquote, like the Ravens defense.
Well, the thing I said this when he was hired. The thing that stands out to me about him, the Greg Williams background, also Todd Bowles' background, they blitz a lot. They're very aggressive with what they do, and I think aggression when I think Denard Wilson. And again, you got to have the right personnel in order to execute that. Otherwise, you're just going to get torched. But
right,
the idea of a super aggressive defense excites me. Could be fun.
It sounds fun.
Yeah.
And then, when you –
it's like, oh, that ball went 45 yards over his head.
Yeah, or when you're Lions and you blitz everybody and a little
Ryan,
screen scores.
Trey Avery. Did you see him in coverage over there?
Denard, what about Trey Avery on that play?
Trey Avery is 9 yards behind the receiver when they threw the ball over there. Did you see that?
Poor John Glennon. He's
I'll never let that go.
I know we've given him a little downtime, but we'll always come back to it. We'll always have that.
Coming up next, it's time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning at 7:45. Our buddy Stilly had a wild one yesterday. We'll get into that coming up next.
Boy.
This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, Robbie Stanley here. Last year at the Super Bowl, Rob Gronkowski went wide left on FanDuel's Kick of Destiny. Now he's back for round 2, and this time you can play along. All you got to do is choose if Gronk will make or miss. I'm going miss again. I think he misses for the second consecutive year, but you can take it any way you want to take it. Get your free pick in right now because if you're right, you win a share of $10 million in bonus bets. Everyone can get in on the action when Gronk takes his shot at redemption before Super Bowl 58. Whether your team make or team miss, just head to the FanDuel Sportsbook app now to get your pick in. It's absolutely free. Then tune in before the game to see Gronk's kick live. You win a share of $10 million in bonus bets if you're right. If you're new to FanDuel, just visit FanDuel.com/Rob to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. No purchase necessary. $10 million prize pool to be split equally among all eligible participants who made the correct pick. Prize issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
It's the rant wheel is what they call it.
Here I thought I said another obscene thing that I didn't mean to say.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. You can check it out every morning on the program, the Rex Rant or the Rob Rant. I guess Keezer's just totally abandoned it, which is fine.
Abandoned what?
No rants for Keezer.
Yeah. When's your rant? You're welcome to rant whenever you want, man.
I don't really get angry that much.
I don't
Unless
know.
Kuharski's wandering around.
I was going to say, PK's coming tomorrow.
I can save one for him.
Up.
Yeah, maybe that's what you should do is do a rant while he's here. I think that would be good.
We can't scheme and he knows.
It's true. It's got to be by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just put it off
at
one
some
of these
point.
weeks. Yeah,
at some point,
ambush him with
my
a
first
rant.
one was awful. That was when Robby was on leave when Allison was born, and I ranted about the grocery store. Do you not remember that, Joe?
There's nothing wrong with that rant. Don't be so hard on yourself.
It could have been better for sure.
No, don't listen to text
We can always
line.
be better, Keezer.
I didn't listen to anybody. I just didn't think I did well.
Oh, okay. I'm not saying the text line ripped you. I've just assumed
There's always a chance for redemption.
I like that.
There
rant.
is.
It was a good rant.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Nick's done talking.
You don't want to talk anymore?
He's done talking.
He doesn't
All right. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Robbie. I got a book to read. Go ahead.
So I believe our friend Stilly probably, if we ranked the rants of the most popular topic, he's probably at or near the top of the list. I will say one of the things that I admire the most / sometimes scares me the most about our friend Stilly is his ability to take a comment, really any comment, and weave his own thought process into it. And we had another shining example of this, Joe, again yesterday. So as we know, Jim Wyatt from TennesseeTitans.com caught up with Peyton Manning at the Pro Bowl this past week. And he talked with Peyton Manning about Brian Callahan and his background, and obviously there's a connection there. Brian Callahan worked with Peyton Manning in Denver, and Peyton Manning's a big fan of Brian Callahan. We established that when Callahan was hired. And Peyton Manning also talked with Jim Wyatt about Derrick Henry. I want to read to you the quote that Peyton Manning told Jim Wyatt at TennesseeTitans.com. Quote, Brian Callahan would love Derrick Henry and vice versa. There's obviously the business side that comes into play, and that's up for Rand Carthon and his staff to decide. But Brian Callahan appreciates a good running game. His dad, Bill, is coming over to the Titans, and his dad is the best line coach in the NFL. I know he appreciates a good back. Tennessee would be a great place for Derrick to continue to play, in my opinion. That was the quote from Peyton Manning to Jim Wyatt about Derrick Henry.
Okay.
So Jared reads this yesterday on the air and then goes through the connection between Peyton Manning and Brian Callahan. And basically the conclusion that he draws at the end of it is Brian Callahan absolutely wants Derrick Henry back to be the running back for the Tennessee Titans, and that Peyton Manning is serving as the intermediary from Brian Callahan to Peyton Manning or to Derrick Henry via the media, and that these comments from Peyton Manning are really coming from Brian Callahan because he's sure that Peyton Manning and Brian Callahan have talked and that Callahan wants Derrick Henry back. So we got from the Peyton Manning quotes about Derrick Henry and how Tennessee could be a great place for Derrick to continue to play, to that is apparently coming directly from the mouth of Brian Callahan.
You say such dumb things.
Yeah, that sounds like Stilly. I missed this, but that sounds like Stilly. Yeah. Rand
So it's good
Carthon.
news. Derrick Henry's coming back, apparently. Brian Callahan wants him back, according to Peyton Manning / Jared Stone.
Was Derrick Henry on the Callahan family's Christmas card? That's
don't know.
really the question here, right? Yeah. First of all, if that was the case, Brian Callahan's been asked about him. He could say whatever he wanted, right? Why would he need Peyton Manning to send subliminal messages through Jim Wyatt?
Peyton, I know you're going to be around Derrick this weekend in Orlando. I need you to do a little recruiting for me, and also
tell him we love him.
Make sure, by God, when you're there, you make sure you go speak to Jim Wyatt. You make sure you find Jim Wyatt and you speak to Jim Wyatt and you talk about Derrick Henry.
Oh my!
I enjoyed it. It was a nice tapestry woven together, Scooby-Doo styled yesterday by Jared.
Yeah, the mystery machine with Jared. Yep, that sounds about right. I feel bad I missed it. Apparently he also had he had Mad Dog. I need to go back and listen to that segment. That's got to be high entertainment. Yeah, we asked Callahan about Derrick Henry. Was his quote about Derrick Henry that he gave to us any less emphatic about him liking Derrick Henry than what Peyton Manning said?
I don't think so.
Right. So what's the benefit? Hey, Peyton, look, man, look. Now this guy for TitansOnline.com, okay?
Yeah.
He probably has a Dodgers hat on, okay?
Visor.
And by the way, I mean Peyton probably knows Jimmy for.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Yeah, I'm sure he does anyway. But I'm trying to play out the whole the conspiracy here. There's always got to be some scheming that goes on.
There's
right?
always got to be some scheming. I appreciate it. I mean, I guess the one thing you could say is, I mean, Peyton Manning was around all these guys all weekend long, and Derrick Henry did talk about how there were some recruiting pitches tossed his way from some other players. So maybe Peyton just threw his name into the hat, and instead of, recruiting for, like the Broncos, the team he played for, or the Colts, the team he played for, he's like, you know what, Brian Callahan, got to go get you back at the Titans, man.
Cali. Got to recruit for Cali. Yeah. It seemed to me like a thing that you're asked about it, and it's like, I don't doubt that Peyton believes what he said.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense.
Look, I mean, Brian Callahan, he may be really intrigued by the idea of bringing Derrick Henry back. I have no idea. The Derrick Henry part of this, I have no idea which way it's going to go. I mean, I am fascinated to see here in about a month when free agency begins what the market for him looks like, because we read it off yesterday. It's not just him. There are a lot of running backs out there. A lot of running backs out there that are going to be available in free agency. And where exactly does he slide into that at age 30 with the skill set that he brings to the table? I think everybody who watches him closely, I think, believes that he can still play and can still play at a pretty high level. Maybe not the same level as he was a few years ago, but a high level. I don't know. I don't know what the interest level is going to look like for him. I don't know what the interest level from the Titans to him is going to be. Like, is Rand Carthon may be resolved to move on and bring in somebody else? I don't know.
Well, like this texter said, Callahan is using Manning to strong hand Rand to get Henry back.
Maybe so.
Did Stilly get into that possibility?
I don't think so, but maybe.
Since we're just making this a Stilly thing, Austin from Clarksville asked, "What are your thoughts on analytics? Are you as against it as Jared?" No, that's the funny thing about Jared is he becomes pawpaw when it comes to any analytics. No, I mean I like analytics. I think sometimes it's a little overdone, and sometimes, the Pro Football Focus grades are stupid.
Sometimes
AF,
I
as
think
I've
it's
said.
okay to kick a field goal. I do believe in that.
I would agree. I would agree with you.
At least try the field goal,
Yep.
Or, a 2-point conversion from the 9. You might want to kick it there.
I got 7 2-point conversions, and I'm going to use them all. Hey, Dan. Oh, my God. He's so huge. I can't argue with him.
Maybe that's
Look
what
how
it
huge
is.
that dude is.
Maybe Dan Campbell knows that he's got all the job security in the world. It has nothing to do with winning. Nobody's going to fire him.
Right.
Nobody's going to step up and fire him. He's too big.
Exactly. I mean, that's probably Vrabel thought he was safe. Like, who's going
keep taking penalties? I'll go for 2 back from our own 45.
Vrabel thought you had to wrestle him and pin him to be able to fire him, and he was wrong.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we will be joined by Jason Lloyd from The Athletic. We'll get his thoughts on Bill Callahan coming over from the Browns to the Titans. What kind of a loss is that for Cleveland, and what kind of a gain is it for the Tennessee Titans to have Bill Callahan on staff? All that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning, taking your thoughts. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Jason Lloyd from The Athletic, who covers the Browns and really all things Cleveland sports for The Athletic. Jason, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're awesome.
Great.
Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning. So, Jason, as you can imagine, lots of excitement around here in Nashville for the hiring of Brian Callahan. And now we know Bill Callahan, formerly of the Browns, coming over with him to join his son on the coaching staff. So let's just start there. How big of a loss is this in your mind for the Cleveland Browns, and how do you describe the impact that Bill Callahan has had on that offensive line group over the last few years?
It's huge. It's a huge loss for the Browns, and I'm sure Titans fans are excited about the head coach hire. They should be equally excited that he's bringing his dad with him. Bill's the best in the league in terms of offensive line coaches, and guys love playing for him. And I guess the best thing I could say, the best example I can give you how good Bill is and how highly respected he is. Ethan Postic is the Browns starting center, and a couple of years ago, his career was sort of on the brink. He had a ton of injuries in Seattle. He sort of busted out in Seattle because of injuries. And there was a little bit of interest in him. He had his options on where to go, and he chose Cleveland. He told me a couple of years ago he chose Cleveland because of the strength and conditioning staff and Bill Callahan. Bill has a reputation for getting guys paid. If you're an average offensive lineman, he's going to make you better, and he's going to get you a contract. And that's exactly what he did for Ethan. Ethan came here, rehabbed, got strong, and the Browns starting center went down on the first snap last preseason. They were trying to get Deshaun ready, obviously coming off the big trade. They were trying to get him at least a couple of looks in the preseason opener. So because you're playing your starting quarterback, you got to play your starting offensive line. Nick Harris, their starting center, goes down on the first play. Ethan comes in, does a phenomenal job, and is rewarded with, I think, a $7 million contract the following year. And that's just what Bill does. Now, obviously, the player has to want it, has to put in the work. But the Browns last year were just shredded on injuries across the line. They lost their top three tackles. Lost their left tackle, the right tackle, and the top backup. And they just kept rolling. They took Jaron Christian off with no team's practice squad, and within 2 weeks he was their starting left tackle out of necessity. And the line wasn't elite by that point by any means, but they didn't get the quarterback killed. And everybody knows the Browns, the quarterbacks that they ran through, they just had a ton of injuries this year, and Bill kept them afloat. He is elite at what he does, and he will make the Titans line better. And he will make the linemen excited that he's coming, because he's going to make, if he's there a long time, he's going to make guys a lot of money that might be very average and might otherwise not have seen it.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite, I've said this on the show, Jason, but one of my favorite things about Bill Callahan's resume is, like, Wisconsin is still considered like offensive line U, and he basically started that 35 years ago. But what's the secret? I mean, what is there secret sauce in there? Is there just something technique wise? Is it like being ahead of the curve on some things, or is it just more about just being a great coach, motivator, and things like that?
I think it's all that. I think he's a great motivator. I think it is technique. I think it's hand placement and footwork and all of that. And but again, it's up to the player too. Jed Wills was the starting left tackle when Bill got here in 2020. They drafted him, and he's not a bust, but it hasn't been a great hit either. He's very, very average at best. And I tend to believe, I'm not sure how much Bill really wanted Jed as that pick. I think he probably had other guys that he wanted in that spot. But he did the best with what he could work with. DeJuan Jones is another example. He fell to the fourth round at Ohio State. There was a lot of maturity issues. He's a massive, massive human being, but he was immature. And Bill whipped him into shape. The first practice, first training camp, DeJuan's throwing up on the field. And everyone's looking like, yeah, okay, this is a long-term project. Then Jack Conklin goes down. And Bill got him ready. Bill got him into shape, and DeJuan put in the work. You got to give the player the credit. They have to want it. They have to put in the work and be coachable, and DeJuan was, and he turned into a huge piece on that line until he also went down with injuries. So, I think he's a great motivator. I think he gets through to guys, and I think it's the technique, it's the hand placement, it's all of that.
So, Jason, what's the reaction been in Cleveland to him leaving? I mean, obviously Kevin Stefanski talked about it and the unique situation here in Nashville with going to work for your son. And we talked about that on the show. We expected it to happen, but Has there been any pushback or people upset that Bill Callahan is gone? What's been the reaction to that news?
No, I don't think it's upset. I think, in fact, I was a little annoyed because the feeling was sort of like the Browns were going to try and stop this or block this or do everything they could to keep it from happening. And that didn't sit well with me because I thought, like, man, you got to do right by the people who do right by you. And this is an unbelievable opportunity. What dad wouldn't want to go work with his son like that? And Kevin made the joke yesterday, this is every kid's dream to go get bossed around, be able to go boss around your dad, go boss your parents. And so I think it's great. And people at Cleveland, I think, understand like what a cool opportunity it is and how rare it is. But certainly there's some concern of like, man, this guy was really, really good. What are they going to do to replace him? And, you know, there's other line coaches, and I'm sure they can figure it out. You know, Joe Thomas's name came up almost immediately as a Browns legend. Obviously, Joe's off in Germany learning how to be a coach right now and said he has no interest in it. But you know, there's fans are sad to see him go, I think, but I think they understand the opportunity that he has, and certainly nobody's upset or mad or begrudges him the chance to go work with his kid. I just think it's so cool, and I wish him all the success and best of luck, and I hope it works out for him because, you know, I got a kid, I got two sons, and would love to be able to do something like that with them someday. I think it's awesome.
So, Jason, on the Browns front, obviously Joe Flacco, just an incredible story, and you know it kind of got away from him in the game in Houston. But meanwhile, obviously the contract, Deshaun Watson, that's all locked in, and he's, you know, we're gonna, I think, find out about him next year. But where do things stand there at quarterback? What's the feeling on Deshaun Watson, and what about, like, is there any possibility of like Flacco as QB2? I mean, I assume he's at least put himself back in the rotation to be somewhere next year.
Yeah, I think he'll be somewhere. I've been adamant for months now. You cannot bring him back, and he was almost too good in the role. And I mean, quite honestly, Cleveland has been very, very slow to embrace Deshaun. Like, he is not beloved here by any means. He certainly has his fans, but there's a significant percentage, and I can't put a number on it, but there's a significant percentage of fans here who don't like him because of all the off-field baggage that comes with him and the fact that he wasn't here when all that happened. Like, had he been drafted here and he had 4 or 5 years of goodwill and bank deposits, you know, of credibility, it might be a little bit different. But the fact that he came here carrying all this stuff, it's been a slow, you know, and plus he's had moments at times of playing well, and there's been times where he just hasn't played well. And then Flacco comes in, and the city just fell in love with Joe hard, fast. Like, here's this guy that comes in off the street, ripping off 300-yard games, running this offense exactly the way it was meant to be run. And, you know, people thought, and you know, I said Deshaun's had moments of struggles, and he has, but yet when he goes down at Baltimore and breaks his shoulder, he's out for the year, you kind of figure like the season's over at that point. And for Joe to come in and resuscitate things and play as well as he did, the city fell in love with him. And so that's not why necessarily, but I think that is a part of it, that the city loved this guy and they don't like that guy. And that guy's got $230 million guaranteed coming to him. But more importantly, I think it's the locker room. You know, I think it would divide the locker room if you bring Joe back, because there's guys in that locker room who fell in line and believed in him and loved him. And the first time Deshaun doesn't play well, you're going to have guys looking over to the corner and saying, well, why isn't that guy playing? He did better anyway. He was better at this anyway. So I think Joe's put himself in a position to probably compete for a starter job on a team that needs a starter. I know it sounds crazy, but he was really, really good. Now, the interceptions were a thing, and it ultimately unraveled them at the end there, and any team that signs him has to know that. But certainly he's put himself in position to make a few $1 million next year if he wants to continue playing. And the Browns, I mean, Deshaun's cap hit right now is $64 million for next year. And, you know, they could rework that. They could restructure it and kick the can down the road a little bit on that. But I don't know how much you can devote to a backup quarterback salary when you're paying your starter $64 million on the cap. So for a variety of reasons, I don't think Joe's back next year, but I think he has earned the opportunity to go play elsewhere if he wants to keep going.
Jason Lloyd with us here on Robby and Rexrode. Jason, we mentioned the job that Bill Callahan did last year with the injuries that they had to deal with. What about Kevin Stefanski and the job he did of keeping the thing on the rails and the trajectory with him as head coach moving forward here, hopefully for Cleveland's sake with a healthier roster next season? What do you think that looks like?
I think he's one of the best young coaches in the league. I think he's the best coach they've had here since they came back. He is so good, and some fans here still have been slow to warm up to him and sort of see it the way that I think it is. And I just go back to the Deshaun thing one more time. They fired their offensive coordinator and they brought in Ken Dorsey. They introduced Dorsey yesterday as the new OC, as sort of someone more in line with how Deshaun wants to do things. Kevin is very much an under center play action type of play caller. That's what he likes. That's what he's comfortable with. The Browns offense is in a lot of ways very similar to what San Francisco runs. And it's something Deshaun has not been comfortable. He hasn't had a lot of familiarity with it. He's used to being in the shotgun primarily. And so here comes Dorsey, who coached Cam Newton, who coached Josh Allen, who puts guys in shotgun, who's very comfortable with that. But Kevin is very much a trick play guy. He loves misdirection. He loves trick plays, and Ken is not that. Kevin, like I said, likes to be under center and run a lot of play action that way. Ken calls primarily out of shotgun, so we'll have to see. Kevin said yesterday they don't know who's going to call the plays yet, Ken or Kevin. I tend to think it's probably going to be Ken, although I believe it should be Kevin. Here's a coach who now in 4 years is a finalist for Coach of the Year twice. He very well may win Coach of the Year Thursday because it's a regular season award, and he was the Vegas favorite when the season ended. Now, D'Amico Ryans obviously in the run Houston went on in the playoffs beating Kevin would seem to strengthen his case, but the votes were already cast by then. So it wouldn't shock me at all if Kevin is a 2-time winner of Coach of the Year, and now he's had to rebuild his offensive staff in Cleveland. But I just think he falls in line with the young offensive-minded play callers that the league is in love with right now. He's so even keel, and Cleveland's ownership is so neurotic and emotional and all over the place. And he's sort of the steady hand at the ship that I believe this franchise has desperately needed for years. And he's just done a phenomenal job keeping this thing together with all the injuries that they've had. He sort of likes the challenge. He's sort of a psychopath that way. Like, the more injuries, the better. Give him, I was joking during the season, give him a 2-liter bottle, some duct tape, and some rubbing alcohol, and he'll build a bomb. Like, he's just one of those guys. Just give him a couple ingredients and tell him, okay, go figure it out. And he's an Ivy League guy. He's incredibly smart, but he's not one of those guys who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He loves to collaborate. He loves ideas from everybody. And I think he's done a phenomenal job with what he's been given here.
All right, Jason, what's going to happen Sunday, and where are you on Chiefs fatigue?
It's funny because all year long, I do a show here in town, and all year long I kept saying the Chiefs are fine. They're just bored. I covered the Cavs. I covered the NBA for 10 years, and I saw it when LeBron was here, where after you get there and after you win it, the regular season just doesn't matter to you. And I've maintained all year the Chiefs are bored. The Chiefs are bored. The Chiefs are going to be fine. And everybody finally talked me out of it toward the end of the season. I was like, all right, maybe there really are problems with Kansas City. Nope. The Chiefs were bored. Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. I can't go against the Chiefs at this point. I mean, I think the 49ers are the most talented team in the NFL, top to bottom. But boy, you just can't bet against Patrick Mahomes. He is that guy. He's the LeBron of this generation, the Jordan of this generation, whatever you want to put on it. I think he's going to rewrite the record books by the time he's done. And anytime he's in that game for the foreseeable future, I just can't pick against him.
Well, Jason, really appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much for taking time to join us this morning, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
Jason Lloyd from The Athletic, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Some really interesting comments from him on Bill Callahan. We'll get to those coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Has there been any pushback? Are people upset that Bill Callahan is gone? What's been the reaction to that news?
No, I don't think it's upset. I think, in fact, I was a little annoyed because the feeling was sort of like the Browns were going to try and stop this or block this or do everything they could to keep it from happening. And that didn't sit well with me because I thought, like, man, you got to do right by the people who do right by you. And this is an unbelievable opportunity. What dad wouldn't want to go work with his son like that? And Kevin made the joke yesterday. This is every kid's dream to go get bossed around, be able to go boss around your dad, go boss your parents. And so I think it's great. And people of Cleveland, I think, understand like what a cool opportunity it is and how rare it is. But certainly there's some concern of like, man, this guy was really, really good. What are they going to do to replace him? And there's other line coaches, and I'm sure they can figure it out. Joe Thomas's name came up almost immediately as a Browns legend. Obviously, Joe's off in Germany learning how to be a coach right now and said he has no interest in it. But there's fans are sad to see him go, I think, but I think they understand the opportunity that he has, and certainly nobody's upset or mad or begrudges him the chance to go work with this kid. I just think it's so cool, and I wish him all the success and best of luck, and I hope it works out for him.
That was Jason Lloyd from The Athletic joining us in the last segment, offering his thoughts on Bill Callahan. Appreciate him taking time to be with us. It was interesting, Joe, to hear him talk about Bill Callahan and how he's viewed by players, right? In terms of, like, hey, man, if you're a lineman and you want to go make some money, yeah, go to where Bill Callahan is, and he'll bring out the best in you, and you'll get a contract if you go work with Bill Callahan. It's probably not the be-all, end-all when it comes to the offensive line discussion, but you would have to think that adding Bill Callahan to your staff is a major plus for Brian Callahan, not only in terms of developing linemen that are already here, but also maybe being an attractive option to free agent linemen in the future that could bring in some of those guys to your team to add to your roster and maybe improve the depth a little bit as well.
Yeah, I should across the board, it should be a positive bump for the Titans. Development of guys, interest of free agents, and then like Ben's asking about, the draft process. I mean, like Ben in the text line said, the key thing he said is it has to do with the player too. Does that mean Bill Callahan's a big part of the scouting for drafting linemen? I mean, sure. I mean,
I would hope so.
Yeah, but I would hope any NFL team is having their position coaches are grinding on film of any guys that they might draft at that position, right? But you would hope that. So of course, every position coach is involved in things like that. But you would hope that he would have a very keen eye for good talent. Obviously, the Browns, the Browns have had a very good offensive line, as Jason just pointed out there. They lost Conklin among them. They're 3 tackles. They signed Conklin, of course, away from the Titans a few years ago. And really, one of the big moments that ended up hastening the Titans' demise up front was not paying Conklin, and you can argue that either way, but then obviously the failures in replacing him have really been the issue. But, yeah, I would think that Bill Callahan would help there too. So it'll be I think we're going to see new faces, and of course it's so much about what those players are before they ever are coached one single rep by Bill Callahan. But then new faces and him means what? How much of a turnaround can an offensive line make in 1 year?
Well, it's interesting too, whether you're talking about obviously Stoutland in Philly or Callahan here now with the Titans. Why are they so good? Like, what separates them from some of the other offensive line coaches in the league? And Jason with us in the last segment, he talked about the technique part of it and teaching those things, but also the scheme part of it too, like identifying different ways to block, different coverages, all those different things that go into it. Like, it is fascinating that pretty much like going through this process, those are the 2 names that come up, right, of Stoutland and Callahan, pretty much universally throughout the league as the best offensive line coaches.
Yeah, it is interesting. I covered Stoutland for many years, and I can tell you, I think a lot of the key to his success is like relationship. I mean, I know but like he's a motivator. They love him. He's fiery. By the way, he's a big dude, kind of ripped. So I don't know, like maybe
is that why he's not a head coach?
Yeah, maybe in the NFL, they're getting a little uncomfortable with that. But in all seriousness, I mean, he's just a huge personality, And yeah, of course it's technique and it's well, Jeff Stoutland is the guy who explained it to me one time. He's like, basically think of offensive line play as like he said, like synchronized swimming or ballet. That's the collective, right? But it's like so much of this is about 5 people, working in tandem. Like if you watch synchronized swimming, but it's 5 people instead of like 2 people or whatever. You know, and I was like, wow, that's an interesting comparison. So you have the collective as an offensive line coach, that just everything coordinated, what you're doing, run plays, the timing, all that stuff, and then you have the individual development, hand placement. I mean, there's got to be limitations, though, right? Like, first of all, these coaches all go to clinics. I mean, like they all go to clinics. They all, I mean, if you're an offensive line coach, if you're Jason Hodling, would you not want to know every single thing that like Bill Callahan and Jeff Stoutland have ever
sure.
done?
Yeah.
That's what they do, and they do. They talk to each other. They mentor each other. There's clinics. So I don't know that there's like some secret technique, hand placement thing. I think it's more about reaching people as a mentor.
Indy Ben has weighed in on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Says, should be a good battle against Indy's defensive line once the Titans add talent on the offensive line. The Colts just added a top college defensive line coach in Charlie Partridge from Pittsburgh, who NFL teams and even Saban have pursued before.
Stolen away from Robby and Rexrode co-executive producer Pat Narduzzi.
Yes.
So sorry for your trouble, Pat. That's a good ad for the Colts.
It's a good ad. I love.
It's good to hear from Indy Ben.
Indy Ben coming in saying, all right, enough of the Bill Callahan stuff. Let's talk about Charlie Partridge.
Yes. Indy Ben's been quiet. What if they had just not blown that game against the Texans? How much more would we be hearing from Indy Ben in the last few weeks? I bet you a little bit
Probably
more.
a lot.
But it's good to hear from you, Indy Ben.
It is good to hear from
you. You know what? I'm sad that we haven't heard from.
Who's that?
Like Gover never responded. Was I too much of a jerk to Gover?
Did you chase him off?
I don't know.
Jeez.
I was just it's no. Don't be mad at me, Gover.
Where's Heidi from Dixon? Where's she been?
Where is she?
I don't know.
Did she die?
God, I hope not. It's been a
I
long
totally
time.
forgot about her. Oh my gosh.
How could you
Now I
forget
feel
about
terrible. I think she died.
Ugh, God, I hope not.
Or what do we call her, Lou?
Yeah, Lou. Hope you're still with us.
Come back, Heidi/Lou.
More of your thoughts. It could have just been Jared. He just finally gave up. He's like, yeah.
That's true.
I've been doing this facade long enough.
He's got burners all over this text line.
We'll have more of your thoughts on Bill Callahan coming up next, including a really interesting question Rexrode has thrown out there that I want to get to as well. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Make sure you tune in to 102.5 The Game tonight as Vanderbilt men's basketball takes on Kentucky at home. Pregame at 7 o'clock, tip-off at 7:30. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Taking your thoughts on Bill Callahan to the Titans, 615-737-1025. And, Joe, you've thrown out an interesting question, and basically the root of the question is this. Now that you have Bill Callahan, are you more willing, are you more comfortable maybe to take a shot on some underrated or maybe – I don't know, is undervalued the right word, offensive line prospects, because you have great confidence in your coach's ability to coach them up now? Is that something that you do if you're Rand Carthon and the Titans? Does having Bill Callahan influence your personnel decisions on how you view offensive linemen?
Yeah, like I'm not saying, well, don't need to draft Joe Alt anymore. Let's go to the 7th round, and Bill will make us a nice starting left tackle. But I just wonder how it armed with him, do you maybe in some instances maybe like choose something else over a lineman, because you can go a little deeper and still feel like, I'm starting to feel like as I talk this out, I'm starting to feel Stilly-ish, maybe because I'm seeing DJ Burnside's little illustration of Stilly as Fred from Scooby-Doo. Unmasking. It's
Brian Callahan,
absolutely.
Manning.
DJ, you get a raise for that one, buddy. But, just how does it factor into the discussion about, obviously you still need great players. I'm going to continue to. I got tweeted at yesterday for constantly bringing up, Dillard and Stoutland. But it's just, to me, it's like just, first of all, he was involved in the evaluation, right? For sure, right? Absolutely. Stoutland was involved in the evaluation, and so they missed badly. And also he couldn't. Now, I should give credit to this person, so I'm going to try to do that. But point was made to me, and I don't know if this is true or not, that Dillard played a lot better in Philly than he did here. I don't know if that's true or not. He didn't play that much. He didn't win.
He couldn't have played much worse in Philly than he did here.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, sure, exactly. But like, was he actually pretty good there when he played? He didn't. He lost his job and all that. He never was able to crack the starting lineup. But the point being, when Stoutland had him, he was. I don't know. Is that true? It's Mr. Positivity at JLo172. So I don't know that that's true, but I bring that up just to, again, it's just like position coaches are important, and Bill Callahan is one of the most respected position coaches, period. Forget offensive line coaches, position coaches in the NFL. It's a huge land for the Titans. And I would tell you that, like, I don't expect like Dylan Radins to become a Pro Bowler now because Bill Callahan's here, for example. You know what I mean? And I think there's just still limitations. It's still like all the elements that make up a great player. So much of that stuff has to be there or not.
Well, I can tell you this. Andre Dillard, Pro Football Focus grade, 51 in 2023 with the Titans.
Okay.
In 2022, it was 67.9. And in 2021, a 69.6. So the PFF grade significantly better.
All right.
In those 2
PFF
years in
says
Philadelphia.
Stoutland, when we had Stoutland, he was better. So there we go. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up PFF, because you know that I love the PFF grades.
That's why I did it.
But, yeah, so like Callahan, it's like when you go into the whole process of acquiring linemen, first of all, if you want to know from him who he thinks is good enough, right? He's got to be a valuable resource in that way. How much of a bump do you think he gives people? Like I do. Like the one guy that I'm really interested in with him, because I do think he has the ability to be good, is Nicholas Petit-Frere. I do. I have not given up on him as someone who has the ingredients of an effective tackle in the NFL. So it was not there last year. It was not there. He had all the other stuff going on, but it was not there. That's a guy who, look, for example, do the Titans need to go get a right tackle? Some people would say, hell yes, they do. But maybe now that you add Bill Callahan, it's like, well, yeah, let's see what he can do with Nicholas Petit-Frere first.
It's interesting. I think you can also kind of view it the other way too, which is actually when it was first kind of announced that Bill Callahan was coming over here. Was my thought process. It was like, well, look, you may love Joe Alt, the player, and you were going to take him all along anyway. Is it more likely now? Like if you love, let's play out the scenario that I keep bringing up, and you're at number 7 overall, and Alt's there, Neighbors is there, and Brock Bowers is there. Like, are you more apt to take Alt because you're like, you know what, we love him and the player that we think he can be, and we have Bill Callahan, and we're that much more confident that Bill Callahan is going to bring him along and make him the player that we think he can be.
I don't hate that. I get it. Yeah, absolutely. It's like you have this guy. So why not give him the absolute best and then think about how dominant you'll be? Sure. I mean, ultimately, every offensive line in the league is usually some mix of higher picks or higher priced free agents and at least one or two, bargain
4th rounder, 5th rounder.
Now, I do think the Lions. I want to say that the Lions this year it was like first, 3rd, and 3rd.
I think so.
That's heavy investment. But guess what? You start right there when you wonder why that team's good.
Yeah.
You start right there. So, yeah, it's just I understand, like Titans fans, I understand fatigue of drafting linemen high because it just hasn't worked out. But, yeah, now you would hope that you wouldn't have misses like that with who you have in the building.
You would hope so. I got a text that says, with the new regime, does Peter Skoronski slide to left tackle? We've talked about that possibility. And Brian Callahan talking about Skoronski and the comments that he said, or he did view him more as a guard coming out, but he's not closing the door on anything. If I had to guess, sitting here today on February the 6th, Peter Skoronski's still the left guard, and they address left tackle somewhere in the draft, be that the 1st or 2nd round. But I guess you can't totally close the door on that, but I think Skoronski being the left guard is probably still the way things are going to go.
Yeah. I have to go with the overwhelmingly predominant evaluation of Peter Skoronski, which was he's an NFL guard. So I understand.
Guard, number 11.
Yeah, and that's fine. If I agree with Stilly. If he's not great, then that's drafting too high, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think. You think about him, which certainly not like a hopeless rookie year at all, but a disappointing year.
Agreed.
Across the board, including for him. But I'd like to see him with a legit stud left tackle next to him and see what that would look like. Perhaps a better center.
I mean, throw the Bill Callahan conversation into him too, right? Like how much
no
better can he be under the tutelage of a guy like Bill Callahan?
Yeah, the expectation is like whatever is the max that Peter Skoronski has is going to be found here.
I got a text that says, do you expect Dylan Raditz to lower his false start count next year?
Yeah, because I don't think he's going to play that much. But he had, 9? He had 9.
It seemed like he had about 70 of them. But, yeah, I think 9 was the official count.
That's a bunch. Yeah, to me, Raditz is – and, hey, we'll see. The Callahan bump, what's it mean to him? But, I mean, to me, he's a guy who should be a depth guy for you. That's what – you want to make that. And, I mean, he's a guard anyway, so I think it's probably Brunskill, Skoronski. I think those are the two spots we know, as close as you can know, that are going to be starters next year. So I think Radins is your third guard.
Well, first off, like the Bill Callahan part of this is probably the extreme level, and like there was no way that the Titans were going to hire Bill Callahan last year. But I will say, like if they come in next year and Skoronski looks great and Nicholas Petit-Frere looks really good and competent and I don't know, like Brunskill looks awesome at right guard, a lot of the conversation that I'm going to have is like, okay, so how bad was like Jason Hotaling? Like how bad was that decision to go from Keith Carter to him? Like you couldn't have gone somewhere else if you were able after that? I mean, it's a moot point now, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like it,
maybe Andre Dillard.
What's that?
Maybe Andre Dillard. Who knows?
Yeah,
he's under contract at the moment.
He is under contract. Maybe he becomes their. I mean, how do we know for sure? Bill Callahan's like, oh yeah, that guy's going to be a star. I'll make him a star.
That would be
the ultimate flex. as a assistant coach in the NFL if he makes that happen.
Yeah, it would. Maybe coach of the year worthy if you make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're not position coaches aren't eligible, but that this should be. Yeah,
you can make an exception.
Override the process to make him NFL coach of the year.
You probably should.
God, we rip Andre Dillard way too much on this show.
We did the same thing to Dennis Daly last year.
And doesn't he look good now by comparison?
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll have more coming next. More of your thoughts to get to on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Happy Super Bowl week to all who celebrate from FanDuel and for me, Joe Rexrode. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is going to be about a great seat on the couch, some fantastic snacks, maybe a little buffalo chicken dip, and super bets, of course. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. You can bet not only on who's going to win Super Bowl 58 between the Niners and Chiefs, but FanDuel also has bets for players scoring a touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, all kinds of different things you can do. My prevailing parlay, 3-leg parlay, is Chiefs over Kelsey anytime touchdown. New customers join today. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Get in on that action. Just visit FanDuel.com/Joe102 to sign up again. FanDuel.com/Joe102. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You must be 21 or older in present Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued is now withdrawable bonus bets to expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, final segment of the day, broadcasting live from our Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Make sure you join us on Saturday, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, officially inviting you to our first ever Super Saturday. Join us this Saturday at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 p.m. for this fun, family-friendly soup fest benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. Tickets are only $10. To purchase tickets, see all participating restaurants. Go to thegamenashville.com/soup. You can also enter to win tickets to Super Saturday. All you got to do, text in the keyword soup to 615-737-1025. A lot of people piling on Dylan Radins on the text line about his false start count, saying that 9 sounds like the per-game average. I'm just the messenger.
Wow.
That's what it's saying.
That's harsh. Well, gets us away from ripping on Andre Dillard. Like Chase just came in here and said, Dillard, Daly, bring Daly back. Dillard and Daly, your bookend tackles, Pro Bowlers.
Sure.
Super Bowl. Bill Callahan, greatest coach of all time.
Sure, a prospect of that's a prospect Will Levis be very excited about. Oh, good. Andre's back, and this Dennis Daly guy I've heard about. Awesome.
Will Levis asked for the long snapper to be the center so that he can take snaps from 20 yards behind the line. I mean, he's got the arm. Why not try that? Try like a super shotgun offense.
I mean,
if
Joe Milton ever makes his
second and a
way
half.
to being a starting quarterback in the NFL, which I don't know if he will or not, but that's probably not a bad way to go. Like, Joe, you be back there. You 35 yards back, they'll never sack you.
That's kind of a brilliant new offense in the NFL. Long snapper at center and Joe Milton just untouchable because he's 20 yards behind the line.
Never going to sack him.
You can just line him up in his own end zone and just let it go, baby. Hail Mary at halftime. He'll get to the other end zone.
I got a texter asking the question, if 6 months from now Bill Callahan tells you that Dillard is the starting left tackle and he's confident in him, are you worried or are you confident because of Callahan's reputation? Yeah, I'd still be worried.
Yeah, I'd be. Again, the other guy known as, and he is great, Jeff Stoutland had Dillard too. So, yeah, that'd be a little concerning, I would say. But, hey, it'd be interesting to watch. I'm here for it. If that's how it turns out, I am here to see how that turns out.
Ben says maybe Bill Callahan can protect Tannehill and return him to greatness. I don't think Tannehill's going to be here.
Yeah,
I think Tannehill's going to be somewhere else.
Yeah. Wait, Tannehill? What's going on here, folks?
Who is going to be the backup quarterback for the Titans? Is it Malik, or are they going for the different plan?
It's a very good question. We probably should. Well, we have some time, I guess. I was going to say that could be a good segment, later in the week. I feel like, I feel like they need to get a veteran. I feel like they need to get a veteran who can win you a game or two. And look, there aren't a ton of those guys. Again, when you look out there, there's 12-ish teams that have backups that you've never heard of in your life, and you would not want starting a game for you. I mean, there's a limited supply of quarterbacks you feel like you can win a football game with. So I don't have a great answer on who, but I think that they should be in the market for a more proven veteran QB to come in here and back up Levis. Still have to totally remake the offensive line, and bring me
Jameis. Bring me Jameis or bring me death.
I mean, that's not
just
not
purely
a terrible
entertainment-wise.
option.
I
Well,
want Jameis.
yeah, of course for entertainment purposes, but even as it'd certainly be a lot. I mean, to me, a lot better than Malik Willis. As a guy who has had some success in this league. It still has a ton of talent, has won football games. I mean, that's what you're looking for.
By the way, former Titans coach is on the move. So Shane Bowen has ended up as the DC with the New York Giants. So good for him. I wondered whether or not he'd end up with a DC job right out of the gate, and he does in New York. And Mike Garafolo putting this out there just a few minutes ago. The Giants are also hiring former Titans offensive coordinator Tim Kelly as their tight ends coach. So Tim Kelly going to the Giants to be the tight end coach.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. The Jets are going all in on former Titans offensive coaches, and I figured, the Giants, there's going to be a couple guys who joined Bowen who are here. You know this.
Yep.
But now they got Tim Kelly, too. Like New Jersey, that stadium where they're going to have the World Cup final, it's just loaded with Titans coaching alums.
Yeah.
How about that?
Keith Carter.
Good for Tim Kelly.
Todd Downing. The list goes on and on.
Yeah. Tim Kelly, I think Tim Kelly I think he's going to be a good OC again. I do. I think that I wasn't out on him after last year. I think there are a lot of things that he couldn't do much about. There were some days where it's like, yep, stop running into the brick wall for sure. But most of his creative stuff actually was pretty well timed, and I thought worked pretty well. And I think that he's got a future as an OC in this league. But that's not a bad place to go. A tight ends coach is a good launching spot for another OC job down the line.
Oh, and you get to work with Daniel Jones, and who wouldn't want to do that?
Well, there is that too. Who do the Giants have at tight end? Who are the Giants' tight ends?
Good Lord,
they've got a good tight end.
Ends? I mean, they used to have Evan Ingram.
Yeah, that's right. He's in.
Who is the Giants' tight end right now? I'm totally blanking.
We need to name a New York Giants tight end before the show ends.
Tim, here you go.
All right, I'm just going to Google New York Giants tight ends.
That's what I'm doing.
It could turn up like a terrible search, and we'd have
Darren Waller. Jeez.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There you go, Tim.
How do we
Kelly.
forget about him?
Yeah. Well, it's good. Good for those guys. Big year for Brian Daboll, and of course, his OC, as we talked to Jason Lloyd earlier, now in Cleveland.
Yep, no question about it. That's going to do it for us today here on the program. By the way, Jeff Fisher will be joining Chase and Big Joe for the entire 10 o'clock hour.
He's coming in.
He'll be in here.
I love it. Tell Jeff Fisher PK will be in here tomorrow in the same spot. Probably leave it.
He might leave.
Leave a treat for him.
That does it for us. Chase and Big Joe up next. This is 102.5, 106.3 The Game.